Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 2 2025 NFL predictions. Well, for the Fanatic this week, it was a great week to have football back. I definitely had a weird mix of games and prediction slots in the sense that I ended up doing really well straight up, but unfortunately, my against the spread picks, it definitely didn't go well my first week against the spread. That was definitely disappointing in that regard. But the good news is we get to wipe the slate clean and start off a brand new week this week. But what a crazy and wild week one in the NFL that everybody got to watch. We all got to watch the Miami Dolphins absolutely get fried fish. They were fried fish sticks out in Indianapolis. They looked discombobulated. Daniel Jones looked like the quarterback that people thought he would be in the Giants as the sixth pick of the 2019 NFL Draft. Tua had three horrendous turnovers. They couldn't get a score till the very end where Devon Achane got a screen pass to the end zone incredibly quickly. And it was just an all-time debacle for the Miami Dolphins. And, for the Colts, congratulations. I was somebody, like I said, that I defended Anthony Richardson getting the job. I defended Daniel Jones getting the job over Anthony Richardson and throwing 270 yards, running for another 30. He definitely validated my opinion, at least for 1 week yesterday. So congrats to them. When you look at a lot of the other kicking around the league this week, was awful. Chase McLaughlin missing some key extra points. There was the Pats' new kicker who missed a field goal. The Browns and Bengals game. Anybody watched that? My goodness, the Browns were arguably the better team for 98% of that game. And if their rookie kicker, who I didn't, he was so bad he should get cut today. But if you watch that game, that kicker screwed the Browns out of that game by costing them 4 points. Even if you want to say, hey, he missed a field goal, he's a young kicker, whatever, it was still like a 30-plus yard field goal. You're a professional kicker. Come on now, you got to make those kicks. He genuinely screwed up and missed those moments, and that was a huge turning point, for the Bengals to get their first win in a very long time in a Week 1 game. But the Bengals' offense was horrible. Yesterday, Joe Burrow only threw for 110 yards. Jamar Chase only had about 30 yards receiving. T. Higgins didn't play well. And you look at the Bengals, you're glad they won, but you're not thrilled because it was like that was not what the Bengals are supposed to look like against one of the worst teams in the league. There was that game. Cardinals Saints. I have to give New Orleans credit. They collectively played the Cardinals to a one-score game, and they basically couldn't get it in the end zone at the end. But when I thought the Saints were going to be by far, after they stupidly put Spencer Rattler in over Tyler Shug, I'll admit after yesterday, Spencer Rattler played well enough. And I think he probably played out Tyler Shug in the grand scheme of things of what expectations were. So I am fine with that. However, when you look at the rest of the game here, I look at it and say, when you look at Patriots, Raiders, Geno Smith having a career day, 360, a touchdown. Ashton Jeanty getting his first touchdown. Mike Vrabel was a moron. And everybody out there was like, oh, Mike Vrabel and the Pats are going to make the playoffs. I thought they were going to be a good team. Ask me how good that Mike Vrabel hire is after he basically gave up the game by punting the ball with 5 minutes to go in the game, down 10. That's just a decision you cannot make, and you have to go for it on fourth down to try to get a score to put yourself back in a 3-point game. Even if you don't get it, I'm okay with that decision because that was the right decision to make. Eagles, Cowboys, of course the whole Jalen Carter spitting incident's the primary focus. He's probably not going to get suspended. I thought, if he got suspended one game, I would understand, but he basically got suspended the entire game anyway. But the Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb was phenomenal throughout the whole game. He was basically the Cowboys' leading receiver. But at the end of the day, he had a couple big drops, or multiple drops in the big spots. That's not what you expect out of a $36 million wide receiver. And then lastly, and I'll kind of go through the rest of the games. I go through my picks. But the last one, Ravens-Bills, as a Ravens fan, that was incredibly painful, but not surprising. This is a team that routinely has collapsed in big regular season and consistently postseason moments time and time and time again. And when you look at the Ravens, like, this was a huge game in the sense that, again, Lamar and Henry played fantastic. We had 5 touchdowns. Tyler Luke played very well, except missing the extra point. You could argue that you could blame him for that moment. But when you look at it, it just was a awful all-time performance. But I have to give Josh Allen his credit. There was a reason why Josh Allen, in my opinion, is the second-best quarterback in the AFC and the third-best quarterback overall in the entire league, and last night proved it. The man threw combined for 424 yards, 4 total touchdowns. He has the most games in NFL history now with 2 passing and 2 rushing touchdowns. An all-time, I guess, and I know this term has been around the media a lot, an all-time generational quarterback. That's what Josh Allen is, carrying that team to a win. The Bills now have a huge tiebreaker and now an easy 6-week stretch where the Bills should just roll over a bunch of opponents, having that win in their back pocket. The Ravens have a tougher schedule, in theory, with some of the opponents they have, but, we'll see how that goes. But hopefully we can beat the Browns, as we're 12.5-point favorites going into Sunday in our home opener, so we'll see. But let me get into my picks. This is going to be a shorter video because I do have to work, so let me get quickly into my picks. And also, a quick recap of the week so far. So against the spread, I went 5-9-1 against the spread. Dreadful week. Definitely a lot of the games that I thought were going to be blowouts or decisive ended up not working out. I ended up not getting able to get any of the covers on the small ones. Pittsburgh Jets was 2.5. They won by 2. Bills Ravens was 1.5. They won by 1. So definitely some bad beats on those. Pats, Dolphins Colts. That was one where I took the Dolphins with points. That was a decisive blowout. Packers Lions 2.5-point dogs. They got decisively rolled by the Packers. So just a brutal week overall. I did get a push with Denver and Tennessee with 8. So even though Denver was kind of shaky offensively. Bo Nix did throw 2 picks, but I'll talk about that later. But yeah, 5-9-1 against the spread. Though overall with the wins, though, I did have a great straight up week so far. I went 11-4 straight up, and this week and for tonight, I do have the Chicago Bears beating the Minnesota Vikings with the 1.5-point hook on the points when I do them. And I do want to say I understand as well, just real quick. So when I make my against the spread predictions, I make the spread picks at the time of when I do the video. I know the spread changed due to injuries or things happening, because just people have different betting lines. But that's what I'm going to go with. I believe in real life or in real time, the Bills spread actually was, the Bills were 1.5-point dogs at home, which was surprising in itself. But, but I'm not going to take that win because at the time I betted the Bills as 1.5-point favorites. So, all right, so let me get into my picks real quickly. So on Thursday, when the 1-0 Washington Commanders travel to Green Bay to take on the Green Bay Packers are 3.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Green Bay here straight up. Then I'm going to take Washington plus 3.5. Then the next game, when the 1-0 Jacksonville Jaguars travel to Cincinnati to take on the 1-0 Cincinnati Bengals, the Cincinnati Bengals are 3.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Cincinnati here, minus 3.5, and Cincinnati straight up. Then the next game, an NFC East battle at the Taj Mahal, when the 0-1 New York Giants travel to Dallas to take on the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys are 4.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Dallas here, minus 4.5, and Dallas straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-1 or 1-0 Chicago Bears travel to Detroit to take on the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions are 4.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Detroit here, minus 4.5, and Detroit straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-0 Los Angeles Rams travel to Tennessee to take on the 0-1 Tennessee Titans. The Los Angeles Rams are 5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Los Angeles Rams here, minus 5, and the Los Angeles Rams straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-1 New England Patriots travel to Miami to take on the 0-1 Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins are 1.5-point favorites in this game. In one of my upsets of the week, very slight, I'm going to take New England here plus 1.5, and hopefully this game at least is a close game or is a blowout the other way. I did this last week with Miami and Indianapolis, and that just didn't work. But I'm going to try it here. I'm going to take New England here plus 1.5 and New England straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-0 San Francisco 49ers travel to New Orleans, take on the 0-1 New Orleans Saints. The San Francisco 49ers are 6.5-point favorites in this game. Give me San Francisco here minus 6.5, and San Francisco is straight up. The next game, when the 1-0 Buffalo Bills travel to New York and MetLife Stadium to take on the 0-1 New York Jets. The Buffalo Bills are 7-point favorites in this game. I'm going to take the New York Jets here plus 7, but I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-1 Seattle Seahawks travel to Pittsburgh to take on the 1-0 Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Pittsburgh here. Hopefully they can, hopefully Seattle doesn't put on a light show like the Jets did, but we'll see. But the Pittsburgh Steelers are 2.5-point favorites. Give me Pittsburgh here minus 2.5, and Pittsburgh straight up. Then the next game, in the Baltimore Ravens home opener, when the 0-1 Cleveland Browns travel back to Baltimore to take on the old Cleveland Browns, the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens are 12.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Baltimore here straight up, but after what happened, and after seeing what the Browns' performance is, and a double-digit favorite, even though I know it's two different teams in a division rivalry at home and a ticked-off Ravens team, I'm going to take the Cleveland Browns here plus 12.5 to cover. I'll give you the Baltimore Ravens here straight up. And then the next game, when the 1-0 Denver Broncos travel to Indianapolis to take on the 1-0 Indianapolis Colts. The Denver Broncos are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Denver here minus 2.5, and Denver straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-1 Carolina Panthers travel to Arizona to take on the 1-0 Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals are 6.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Arizona Cardinals here minus 6.5, and the Arizona Cardinals straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-0 Philadelphia Eagles travel to Kansas City in the Super Bowl 59 rematch, when the Philadelphia Eagles are 1.5-point favorites in this game, I'm going to take the Philadelphia Eagles here minus 1.5, and Philadelphia straight up. Then the next game, the Sunday Night Football game between two second-year quarterbacks, when the 0-1 Atlanta Falcons travel to Minnesota to take on the 0-1 or 1-0 Minnesota Vikings. I am going to hedge my bet here. I'm going to take the Minnesota Vikings straight up, but give me the Atlanta Falcons plus 4.5. And then the doubleheader for Monday night, when the 1-0 Tampa Bay Buccaneers travel to Houston to take on the 0-1 Houston Texans. The Houston Texans are slight 2-point favorites, and my second outright upset of the week. Give me Tampa Bay here plus 2, and Tampa Bay straight up. And then lastly, in an AFC West battle, I feel bad for the Chargers having to fly from Brazil back to LA, out to Vegas. LA to Vegas isn't as bad, but still, plenty of miles before having a home game. The 1-0 Los Angeles Chargers travel to Las Vegas to take on the 1-0 Las Vegas Raiders. The Los Angeles Chargers are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me the Los Angeles Chargers here minus 3, and the Los Angeles Chargers straight up. All right, it's time for my quick thoughts on each game. The Green Bay Packers over the Washington Commanders. This game to me comes down to, look, the Washington Commanders played a solid game. Their defense pretty much held the Giants in check running the ball. Russell Wilson ended up being the leading rusher on Sunday in that game. And look, Bill Merritt, ended up getting 10 carries for 82 yards. So for all the fantasy users out there, congratulations. Bill did turn a profit for you in week 1 if you started him or played him. I don't know if that's going to keep continuing to happen, but very nicely done there. But if you watch that Giants-Commanders game, the Commanders' offense had a very tough time for long stretches in the game, along with some bad coaching management by Dan Campbell, to really move the ball. It was a one-score game through a majority of the game. And, I was not very impressed. Terry McLaurin had a quiet game. Zach Ertz had some nice plays. Debo actually had a bigger impact on the game than I thought he would in his first game. But I thought Washington, they won decisively, but I really wasn't that overall impressed if you watched the entire game like I did, or most of it, where you're like, okay, like the Commanders won, but the Giants' offense was just inept, and I just couldn't really trust that there. But then when you look at the Packers had probably the most impressive win of the weekend. And I have to apologize. Sorry, Half Moon's Picks, but shout out to Bridgewater's Finest, one of the NFL YouTube prognosticator. I hope everybody checks out the YouTube Prognosticators page, that I put in my description. But the Green Bay Packers had the most impressive win because they basically stifled the Detroit Lions offense to a pulp. That was basically a lot of their overall numbers throughout the game were the lowest in about 3 seasons. And they did not, they scored the garbage time touchdown at the end, but they were getting constant pressure on Jared Goff. Micah Parsons getting in his debut, getting a huge sack in a big moment. Jordan Love and the offense did enough. I thought the Lions' run defense actually did a pretty good job, but The key difference was Jordan Love made a few big shot plays early in the game to get that lead, and then the defense kind of held on and clamped down the rest of that Detroit offense, which has a lot of good talent on it. And I do want to say, though, I was concerned how easily Penei Sewell was getting moved, being one of the higher paid right tackles in the game. So that was a concern, but kudos to Green Bay. But, in this type of game, I love what I saw out of the Packers defense. And to me, the Packers offense is better than the Giants offense in a lot of ways. Jordan Love's playing better than Russ is. They have Jacobs. And I just don't think that Commanders defense, if the Packers offensive line can hold up, is not that dominant. They really didn't add that money else differently. And Jordan Love can, make some athletic moves. And at the end of the day, like in a short week, even though I know the Packers had suffered, a couple injuries, hopefully those guys are okay. But in this type of game, I'm going to go with the home team that I think has the better defense. I think Jordan Love should have an easier time moving the ball against the Commander defense than I think Jaden Daniels will against the Packers. But I'm going to give the Washington Commanders plus 3.5 because I do believe Jaden Daniels is a better quarterback than Jordan Love. So I think if Jaden Daniels can use his legs and make throws to Terry and Debo, this game can give Washington can be very competitive against this Packers team. But a late night game in Lambeau in that cold for an LSU kid, an Arizona State kid, he doesn't play. I know I guess he plays in Washington, but the cold in Lambeau, that's a hard environment to be in first time at night. Give me the Packers to win that game in a fun Thursday night game to open the official Amazon TNF series. So that's all I like. Green Bay here straight up, but Washington plus 3.5. The next game, the Cincinnati Bengals over the Jacksonville Jaguars. I am taking Cincinnati here based on the fact of where, I looked at what the Jags did, and I objectively thought that the Jags and the Colts had games to where, they played very well. Travis Etienne had over 100 yards. Trevor Lawrence, made some good decisions. Brendan Strange was your leading receiver. Travis Hunter ended up getting a few receptions in his debut at, wide receiver. Their defense played very well. They got Bryce Young to have 3 turnovers. But it felt very much like the Colts and Dolphins to where, I looked at the Jags and said, you played a good game. You got a decisive win. You got a dominant win. That's great for Jags fans. They should feel good. But it really was more, in my opinion, the story about how bad the opposing team was compared to how good they were. Okay? And again, to be fair, the Bengals just played the Browns. But this is not a division game. I think Joe and Trevor, who are both being paid $55 million, they both kind of played the same, unfortunately. But, in this kind of game, if it's going to be, two bad defenses, the Jacksonville secondary isn't nearly as good, and we're going to get into an offensive shootout, I'm going to take Joe Burrow, Chase Brown, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins over Brian Thomas, Travis Hunter, Brendan Strange, ETN, or the Jags running back room, and Trevor Lawrence in this game. I just feel like this game for the Bengals, hopefully their offense can get right. Hopefully maybe the defense can learn from what they did against the Browns. But there is that factor of where if you took Jacksonville on the spread or took Jacksonville, just have some of the confidence, I wouldn't be that surprised. Because after watching that Week 1 game yesterday against the Browns, I came out of that game where Bengals fans were thrilled, but I would be uberly concerned with how bad the Bengals had to struggle against the Browns. Even though I know it's a division rivalry, but still, that was very concerning to see. But again, I'm going to take the Bengals here in this game. It's their home opener, and in a game where I think it's going to be a shootout, I genuinely believe the Bengals can outshoot the Jaguars in a pretty easy way with the offensive weapons that are there. So that's why I like Cincinnati here, minus 3.5, and Cincinnati straight up. The next game, the Dallas Cowboys of the New York Giants. This is a game to where when you look at what the Cowboys did, the Jalen Carter ejection definitely helped the Cowboys run the ball. They ran for 119 yards on Thursday night, which was a lot more than anybody thought. And CeeDee Lamb was feasting on the second corner of the Philadelphia Eagles, whether that was Ja'Cory and Bennett or Adoree Jackson. I thought the Cowboys played with poise. I thought they had the better kicker in Brandon Aubrey, who made huge, clutch field goals. He's one of the best kickers in the league, if not the best kicker in the league. I would at least say he's the best kicker in the NFC. The best kicker in the league to me is either Chris Boswell or Harrison Butker, but if you want to have that conversation in the comments, which I would love to. I just think, the Cowboys played a fundamentally solid game. And I just think when you look at what the Cowboys did, I think they can copy that against a Giants team that they did not have Andrew Thomas, but they could not move the ball to save their life outside of slants and go balls to Malik Willis and Wan'Dale Robinson. Tyrone Tracy could not run the ball at all. and Russ could not escape the pressure of the Commanders' defensive line. And look, the Cowboys' defensive line could not. They got a guy named Breeland got 1 sack on Jalen Hurts, but they couldn't get that much pressure. But Jalen's also 11, about 10 years younger than Russ, and he doesn't have nearly as much mobility at this point compared to Jalen Hurts. And I objectively just look at this game and say, okay, the Cowboys can move the ball on the Giants' defense if that line can hold up. If the Giants can run the ball and get the play action game going, maybe they can be competitive in this game. But I just think with how bad that secondary is, with how good the law firm of Tyler and Tyler played against the Eagles' defensive line, I think the Cowboys' offensive line can hold up against maybe a better on paper defensive line. But I just feel like the Cowboys' defense, with that secondary, if you got Diggs and Bland on Neighbors and Wandale, I don't know if Russ is going to be able to, even if he has time, to not be able to find his ability to throw and make big plays and weapons. So, I think, it's going to be an interesting game. If the Giants can actually run the ball and get a play action, maybe the Giants can, be competitive in this game. But I heard Brian Daboll after the game talk about that he was non-committal to Russell Wilson. I'm not saying that Russell Wilson, I knew he was not going to be the starter for the whole year. I just think it's kind of petty and annoying that he is willing to pull the plug after one game. I knew it wasn't great, and he was one of the 3 worst quarterbacks in the league yesterday, outside of maybe I would say Bryce Young and Tua. Russ was better than those 2 guys, and maybe you could argue Cam Ward. But, so he was definitely a bottom 5 quarterback and not play well. But if you were going to pull the plug after one game, you should have just let Jackson Dart start. The Dart start happen week 1 and have Russ be the back. Because Jackson Dart played well enough in the preseason that people could have just said, okay, he's ready to play. Let's just throw him in there. Even if he can't win, you will take, the growing pains and the opportunity to let the guy grow instead of letting Russell Wilson play. So, again, I think the Cowboys, they played a lot better, and I think they have a better roster than people think. But I just think after just watching that Giants game, I can't definitively tell you with confidence that the Giants are going to be able to move the ball against that secondary. And the Cowboys at home, with the new coach and some confidence, they should be able to play well and win. So that's like Dallas here, -4.5, and Dallas straight up. The next game, the Detroit Lions over the Chicago Bears. This one to me, I know the Bears haven't played till tonight, and we could see. I will admit this, I might change my spread pick if the Bears just put an absolute whipping on the Minnesota Vikings tonight. But I'm taking the Detroit Lions here because I think the Lions, they are better than what they showed against the Packers. And I think the Lions' offensive line should be able to hold up better against the Bears' defensive front compared to the Packers. And also the Bears are just dealing with a lot of injuries more defensively. And I just think, again, I think in this Ben Johnson type of feeling with this game, I think the argument would be, taking the brain or the offensive brain out of Dan Campbell and watching the Lions yesterday, that you felt like they were meatheads. They were like, oh, we don't have the brain and the creative genius, and the offense looks stagnant, even though I didn't want to give credit more to Green Bay for just being that dominant defensively. But I'm going to take Detroit here just because I feel like the Lions know that they got their rear ends kicked. They know that they can't drop 2 divisional games, especially their division opener. And I just don't think the Bears, of how Caleb has looked, I know you can look at the Bills preseason game or the preseason game against the Bears and say, wow, that was great. That was fantastic. But I just think, again, they're playing the Vikings. If JJ had more experience, I'd probably take the Vikings. I think the Vikings have a better roster. I think the Lions still have a better roster than the Bears. I can't say the Packers anymore because I watched that game and I can't objectively say that without looking like an idiot. But I'm going to take Detroit here. Better running game. I don't think the Bears' defense is going to be that great tonight, but I'm going to trust that the Lions bounce back and show that they may not win the division anymore. I have to admit that I was wrong about that. I think the Packers are firmly in that spot, even though I know it was a home game. But I think the Lions are still better than the Bears. So that's all, like Detroit here, -4.5, and Detroit straight up. The next game, the Los Angeles Rams over the Tennessee Titans. This one, to me, comes down to the Tennessee Titans objectively looked respectable. They gave up 2 touchdowns, but they also got 3 huge turnovers on the Broncos. And objectively, they should have been up 6-3 at the end of the half. They ended up being down 10-6 and really couldn't do anything. Tony Pollard had a nice reception. but Cam Ward was a rookie, and he looked like a rookie. It wasn't great. It was bad. It was his first start, so give him time. But also, Brian Callahan is an absolute idiot. And if he cannot get a lot of wins, they're going to fire Brian Callahan, even if Cam Ward looks better, just because of his idiotic clock management at the end of the first half yesterday. And again, I will say this. I think the reason why I'm going with the Rams is the Rams only put up 14 points. And look, the Texans' defense is very great. And you could have questions of the fact that basically outside of Puka Nacua, nobody really on the Rams offense could do anything. And the Titans defense did a pretty good job overall, and they could probably get some turnovers on Stafford or, get some breaks. But, remember, they had the number 2 secondary last year, and they played pretty well. They only held Stafford 245 and a TD, and 130 that was the Puka. So basically, they pretty much held most of the Rams offense in check. So I think the Titans defense can play well. But if you're telling me, okay, but I'd rather have Matt Stafford go up against the Titans defense or a Titans defense or Cam Ward go up against the Rams defense that held C.J. Stroud to not a touchdown, I will take that Rams defensive front and secondary over the Titans every day of the week. Because I think the Rams just need to hit 1 to 3 explosive plays and they win. I don't think Cam Ward is going to have another great game. I think it's going to be a brutal, tough road for him there. Thankfully, I have the Rams defense, one of my fantasy leagues. I would start them. But that's what this game comes down to. I think the Titans defense, it played very well if you really look at it in the grand scheme of things, against Denver. They got 3 turnovers. They should have had an opportunity to take the lead, but somehow the Titans offense lost 20-plus yards in the sequence that they had to punt the ball, and they really never took the lead back after that. But, in this game, give me the more experienced quarterback, the better offensive weapons, and just the better defense to stifle a rookie in the second start. So that's like the Rams here -5 and the Rams straight up. The next game, the New England Patriots over the Miami Dolphins. This is a game to where this is not about how great New England is, in my opinion, because New England historically does not play well in Miami. They have had a terrible record, even under Belichick, going down to the South Florida Heat, especially, in September or December, when they're up in Boston in the cold. But this is just about how bad Miami looked. Like, Miami, objectively, if anybody watches every game like I do or try to, Miami's the worst team in the league after week 1. That's just obvious. Like, every other team, like, the Giants had more life. The Saints had more life. The Browns had more life. And I thought the Dolphins were better than these teams objectively going into the year. But after watching Tua look like absolute crap, the offense being that lifeless, the defense letting Daniel Jones look the most efficient, like I said earlier, that's a massive problem. And the Patriots, look, they are going to have a tough game. And they had moments. But Drake May, there were just some key drives where he couldn't really make good throws. Mike Vrabel and his meathead decision to punt. And just when you just look at the two teams, the Patriots should be able to go down there. If the Dolphins, unless the Dolphins get lit up by Mike McDaniel, the goofy analytic nerd, which nobody expects him to do. But I'm going to take the Pats here. It's because the Dolphins played so bad that, objectively, if the Dolphins and Patriots played equal games and that went to a push, I would tell you I'd take the Dolphins at home with the 1.5-point spread due to them being home. Like in this type of game, because I think both teams are equal. But after watching that game, there's no way that objectively in my good conscience, I can't take the Patriots to win this game. Could the Dolphins win? Sure. They're at home. They might get their butts chewed out by Mike McDaniel and that coaching staff. And they may play inspired football. But until I see that, on Sunday, and I'll bite the bullet for the loss either way, both on the spread and picking, and I get the Pats with points, I'm going to take the Patriots to win based off of that. I was impressed, though, with Diggs. Diggs had a nice game. Henderson had a few nice, good runs. And that one young safety, Jennings, who had a big interception and a sack, really good defensive playmaker. I'll shout out there Harold Landry, who had 2.5 sacks as well. So that's why I like New England here straight up, and New England plus 1.5. The next game, the San Francisco 49ers over the New Orleans Saints. This one, to me, comes down to the New Orleans Saints. Let me apologize real quickly to you. You are not the worst team in the league, at least through week 1. I don't think you're going to win games, but you objectively looked much more competent than at least 5 to 6 different teams that I could argue that I saw yesterday. Spencer Rattler threw for about 270 yards. Kamara ran well. You held the Cardinals to 20 points with Kyler Murray, Trey McBride, and James Conner in that offense. Like, that's a competent football team that you're watching. It's not a great football team. It's not a good one. But I could watch the Saints football game and go, they played well. And for Saints fans, you kind of got what you wanted. You're going to get a competitive, entertaining product while you're on the verge for the Nuss bus. I definitely think now, if Arch Manning is not going into the draft, the Saints are on the Nuss bus to get Doug's kid to be the next quarterback of the Saints if they continue to lose. So, but this one here with the Niners, I'm taking the Niners here. Better running game, phenomenal defense. The Kittle injury is big, and that's not going to help, but I don't think it's going to matter against this Saints secondary. They're going to be able to run the ball, McCaffrey, very well. I think it's going to be a huge game in that regard. But I'm going to take the Niners. Good road team, in a dome. Purdy's played pretty well against these NFC South teams. I hope he doesn't turn the ball over. He did have 2 terrible picks. And I think the Niners are just significantly better than the Saints. However, I do want to say this. The Niners' downfall this year will be their special teams. The Niners' downfall will be their special teams based on the fact that Jake Moody, if the Seahawks, if Nick Bosa doesn't strip Sam Darnold, the Seahawks win that game in a brutal way because of Jake Moody and his special teams. Purdy's probably second, but they should have at least had 6 points. And again, I could see people arguing, hey, Jake got his kick blocked. That's not on him, sure, but that's just not great. But that's why I'm taking San Francisco for all those reasons, -6.5, and San Francisco straight up. The next game, the Buffalo Bills over the New York Jets. I'm taking the Bills here. Best team in the league, at least through week 1. Phenomenal performance by Josh Allen, who is at least through week 1, and it's still incredibly early. Things could change, but he is the leader of the pack in the MVP race once again after that type of performance against the Baltimore Ravens. Keon Coleman, Shakir, that offense was just moving up and down the field. And real shout out real quick to the Jets. The Jets offense, in an incredible surprise, was doing the same exact thing throughout their game. If you would have told me the New York Jets would have scored 32 points in a football game, and an Aaron Glenn and whatever his offensive coordinator, I feel bad I can't think of his name, offense, I would have told you they would have won the game because I'm like, there's no way the Jets could score 30 points in an opener like that. But unfortunately, Aaron Glenn, who had the 28th ranked defense last year, showed why he had the 28th ranked defense to let Aaron Rodgers put up 34 points and let Chris Boswell kick a 60-yard field goal. But I do want to say this. The Jets and Bills in New York have always had odd games. And Josh Allen has lost some really awkward games in New York. And I think the Jets, can they take the confidence and can Justin Fields copy that performance? Nobody's expecting Justin Fields to win this game again. Because, again, you can't, unless you're just a diehard Jets fan or just don't believe the Bills got robbed or something Ravens fan. But if the Jets, what I need to see out of Justin Fields and the Jets this Sunday is, can the Jets mimic the same type of performance? Either defensively or offensively. I'll take either way. If you can stifle the Bills' offense to just put up 41 points against the Ravens and hold it to a low game, or you can go in a shootout and keep them in 7 and 10 points against the Bills, that's more promise for the Jets. That's more promise for the Jets. It doesn't help Justin Fields, who I will continue to say, and you might call me a hater for this, I don't really care that Justin Fields pretty much played Rodgers to a match. He still lost. He's still a loser. And Justin Fields needs to win games to prove his point, even if he puts up the best numbers of his career, in my opinion. Not for Glenn, but for Fields. But I'm going to take the Bills here to win because I just feel like, how can you not after watching that performance against a much better team? But I am going to give the Jets their respect and just the history of these games in New York to take the Jets with the points, just because I don't know exactly how that's going to go. But I'm going to take the New York Jets here +7, but that's why I'm taking the New York Jets here +7, but the Buffalo Bills straight up. The next game, the Pittsburgh Steelers over the Seattle Seahawks. This is a game to me to where the Pittsburgh Steelers have Rodgers, and that Seattle offense is not nearly as good as apparently as Justin Fields. They might have better receivers, which will be interesting, but I don't think their running game of how inept, and Sam Darnold is not the athlete that Justin Fields is, so I don't expect Sam Darnold to scramble and make runs. But Zach Charbonnet led the team in rushing yesterday with 42 yards. Kenneth Walker, their other first-round pick, ran for 20 yards. So if the Pittsburgh Steelers can stifle the run game, I have enough confidence that the Seattle or the Pittsburgh secondary should be able to hold up against Jackson Smith-Njigba and Cooper Kupp. And here was the other thing. For all the JSN fans out there, like, oh, look, he was phenomenal. He was a number one receiver. Force-fed wide receiver. That offense was terrible. That offense sucked, and the Seahawks are in a lot of trouble if they can't get the ball to other people outside of JSN. Because I believe Cooper Kupp was their second leading receiver who had 20 yards. And, look, I know Seattle fans like, oh my God, Justin Fields put up 32 points. They were able to run the ball. And yeah, maybe you could run the ball with Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet, but after watching what the Niners defense did and knowing how prideful the Steelers defense is, I don't expect the Seattle Seahawks to be able to put up 30-plus points in that outing as well. So, should be an interesting game. It was the Rodgers revenge game yesterday. It is the DK Metcalf revenge game this week. But I'm going to take Pittsburgh here. Home opener. West Coast team. This is not Pete Carroll going after the East Coast. This is Mike McDonald. And I just think Sam Darnold is going to have a much tougher time trying to move the ball through the air against the Pittsburgh secondary than he did the Niners. And I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to have as many turnover plays that gave the Seahawks more of an opportunity to win. So that's why I like Seattle here, -2.5, and Seattle straight up. The next game, the Baltimore Ravens over the Cleveland Browns. I'm taking Baltimore here. Look, the Browns and Ravens, the last time we did this, we killed them. We're ticked off. The Browns are just not nearly in the same class as the Ravens. Maybe, look, the defensive line is going to be really good. The offensive line with Derrick Henry, the Ravens offense, should be able to just run through the Browns. If we could run through the Bills, we can run through the Browns. Lamar should be able to play incredibly well. The Browns defense, we have a huge kicking edge, and I feel like the Ravens are about to put a BTA on the Cleveland Browns just out of anger. But I will give the Cleveland Browns their credit. They played the Bengals much tougher than I thought. And I just think after that kind of game where we had a 12.5-point spread in a division game, even, with the discrepancy in talent between the Browns and Ravens, I have to take the Browns at 12.5. I will give the Browns their due with that defense. They should have beat the Bengals. And if they could beat the Bengals, they could at least cover against us. If you're doing a pick and pull with confidence points, take the Ravens with 16. That's what I'm going to do. But if you're going to do a spread pick, I'd put my money on the Cleveland Browns to cover, just because I think it's a division game. The Ravens are frazzled, and I just expect the Browns to be more competitive than people think. And to be fair, we played the Raiders last year in a similar spot, and we ended up losing. I don't think we're going to lose to the Browns. I think the Raiders, but I think covering is not out of the question. So that's why I like Baltimore here straight up, with Cleveland plus 12.5. The next game, the Denver Broncos over the Indianapolis Colts. This game to me comes down to the Denver defense is going to make Daniel Jones look a lot more like Daniel Jones. I think the Broncos played an effective game. J.K. and Harvey did enough on the ground. I think the Denver offensive line did enough. The only thing that I would say is I won't be that surprised if Indy wins if Bo Nix plays like he did yesterday. Because Bo Nix, you could argue, the Broncos won for two reasons. One, they were playing a rookie quarterback, and they won in spite of Bo Nix. Bo Nix, who Sean Payton said, he's going to be a top 5 quarterback. Oh, yeah, that's a top 5 quarterback outright that, basically wasn't for the Titans' mismanagement and stupid coaching. You could have lost to Cam Ward and a rookie that didn't even throw for 100 yards. And Daniel Jones is much further ahead than Cam Ward. It's another home game for the Colts. That Colts offensive line did a good enough job. Daniel Jones has mobility. Daniel Jones has, shown that he can play effective football. And if Bo Nix commits those turnovers against the Colts offense, the Colts definitely can at least get points, or I feel confident that they can make scores to make the Broncos defense, have struggle. Because if you look at this Broncos team, their strength, in my opinion, this year is not on the offensive side of the ball, it's on the defensive side of the ball. And that's why I would, tell Bronco fans, again, I think you have a better defense. You'll make Daniel Jones look more like the Daniel Jones that we all know. But I just think the Colts can compete against this Broncos team, and that would be the one game where I wouldn't be surprised if the Colts... I won't be that surprised if the Colts get this win. Because then we have to look at the Colts. If they beat the Broncos and the Dolphins, especially if they do it in more decisive fashion, we have to look at the Colts and go, okay, this could be a playoff team. And for the Colts, that's a massive step forward after what happened last year. And that keeps Steichen and Ballard's jobs, at least for another week. At least for another year. So that's why I like Denver here, -2.5, and Denver straight up. And I guess lastly, Colts fans, do not exchange your Danny Dimes for Danny Dollars. He is the Sam Darnold of 2025. if you give that long-term commitment, the Giants already did it. Yeah, you will immediately regret it. Let Daniel Jones play it out. If he can get you far enough to win a playoff game, you tag him and you move forward after that. If he does it after 2026, then he has 2 years together. Then you give him the contract. But you don't do it after this year, regardless of what he does. So that's why Denver here -2.5 and Denver straight up. The next game, the Arizona Cardinals over the Carolina Panthers. This one to me comes down to the Carolina Panthers sucking. The Carolina Panthers, I thought, were the second worst team in the league behind the Miami Dolphins this week. The offense looked inept. Ted McMillan couldn't really do anything. The Panthers defense was getting gashed by the Jags. The Jags just had consistent control. And I just feel like when you look at the Cardinals, they basically can give a copy of the Saints game. And I would make an argument that the Panthers may actually look worse than what the Saints did, which is something I was not expecting to say at this point. Also, they have to go out to the West Coast. The Panthers and Cardinals have always had weird games. I remember Cam Newton's debut. He threw for 400 yards, and he lost to the Cardinals in Week 1, 2011. The Panthers have really always had kind of an odd time going out to Arizona in these games. Well, it's very much the same way, though, the opposite way. Arizona always has a tough time going out to Carolina in some big spots throughout history as well. But in this one, I just think the Cardinals, they're going to play well. I think, you can look at promise with Connor and Benson. And the Cardinals, it's like, they're to me, the wild card team of, you can say they're overrated or underrated. And these 2 weeks are not really going to move the needle either way. They're going to play good football. You're going to say, okay, that's a good coach team, great defense. Or you're going to look at the competition and go, yeah, they did enough. They played well enough. But are they as good as, the 2-0 start would be? I think they would be a 2-0 pretender through 2 weeks at the end. But I think they win this game fairly easily. So that's why I like Arizona here, -6.5, and Arizona straight up. The next game, the Philadelphia Eagles over the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm taking the Eagles here based on the Chiefs' injuries. That game in San Paulo was an outright sad game for the Chiefs' running game. They could not run the ball to save their life. Patrick Mahomes was the leading rusher for the entire teams on either side. Justin Herbert outran the Chiefs running backs. But when I look at this game, I'm taking the Eagles here based off the injuries to the Chiefs receiving corps and the Rashee Rice suspension. I think the Eagles will be able to limit the Chiefs running game, and then it just comes down to the Eagles' top corner is going to be on Marquise Hollywood Brown, their third best receiver. I don't think Patrick Mahomes will be able to have time to make throws. It looked clunky and awkward. I think Jalen Hurts' mobility can do the same exact type of plays that Justin Herbert did to win the game against the Chiefs on Friday. And I just think, the Eagles just are healthier, even though they did lose their fullback. They're not going to have Jalen Carter's suspension. I just think the Chiefs, they're going to feel a bit desperate, but I just think the Eagles, fundamentally, with the injury to that receiving corps, are just the better team. And I don't think the Chiefs secondary is going to be able to hold AJ and Devontae unless it's the game plan, unless they're able to run the ball with Saquon effectively. I just think the Eagles are just better, healthier, and more consistent at this point than when I saw it of the Chiefs. I think even if the Chiefs would have beat the Chargers in a comeback game, I still probably would have taken the Eagles with the Xavier Ward the injury. But I think with that loss, it just kind of showed me that the Eagles are just the better team at this moment compared to the Chiefs. Should be a great game. Taking the Eagles on the road against the defending AFC champs, the revenge factor. There's all that factoring into Casey's favor. But I'm going to take the Eagles here. Better team, healthier team, tougher environment. They've won in Kansas City before back in 2023. And I think the Eagles, get another quality win to drive to their third game against the Rams and another big home game against the quality NFC opponent. So that's like Philadelphia here, -1.5. Philadelphia straight up. The next game, the Minnesota Vikings over the Atlanta Falcons. I'm going to take the Vikings here regardless of how J.J. McCarthy does due to the Drake London injury. Just because I feel like if the Vikings defense can play well and J.J. can at least play adequate. I will admit that if J.J. looks absolutely terrible, I might change my pick straight up to Atlanta. I'm going to take the Falcons +4.5 because that's just the respect for what they did against the Bucs at home. But I just think if Drake London, who sprained his shoulder, he's day-to-day, he can try to play through it. But if he's not out there against that Vikings defense, and Harrison Smith should be back, I know he's out tonight with an illness, I think the Vikings should be able to win their home opener. Could the Falcons win it? Sure. And if J.J. McCarthy, and I will put this caveat out there, if J.J. McCarthy looks like an absolute bot, I will switch my straight-up pick to the Falcons. I'm picking the Falcons plus 4.5, regardless of J.J.'s performance or what the Vikings do, because I thought I wasn't that impressed with the Falcons overall as a team. Though Young Hoku, as the only Asian kicker in the league, as a fellow Asian person, way to let us all down, buddy, by missing another clutch kick. But to be fair, thank you. As someone to pick the Bucks, I greatly appreciate that you actually gave me the win instead of having to go to overtime where you could have lost. So this should be an interesting game. Penix and McCarthy start 5 or start 6 or start 5 for Penix, start 2 for McCarthy. 2 young quarterbacks that have a lot of promise, have a lot of potential. 2 kind of competent teams. But I think at the end of the day, with the Drake London injury, and I think if JJ plays well enough, the Vikings should be able to outplay the Falcons just due to the coaching matchup of taking Kevin O'Connell over Raheem Morris. So that's why I like Minnesota here straight up at Atlanta plus 4.5. Again, depending on what happens tonight, I might switch my pick to Atlanta straight up as well. So just that little caveat there as I'm doing this video. And then the final 2 games, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the Houston Texans. This game to me comes down to the Tampa Bay defense being able to smother the Houston offensive line. I think Tampa Bay can get a good amount of pressure on C.J. Stroud. And I think Tampa's offense can move the ball effectively, kind of in the same way. I think Mike and Emike can do similar things to what the Rams offense did. Baker's a bit more mobile than Stafford. He could probably extend plays. I like Auden. I think Bucky should be able to have an effective game. And I can't trust that Houston offensive line. I think the Bucs pass rush, it didn't get there, but Penix is a better athlete than Stroud is. So, again, I think it's kind of an odd moment there where, Houston's defense can definitely stifle the Bucs, and that could happen. But I'm going to take the Bucs here because I just trust the offense and the defensive line. I just think the Bucs are a better team than the Texans. The Texans' defense definitely wowed me. Incredibly impressive against the L.A. Rams. Held them to only 2 scores. But that Rams defensive front ate the Texans' offensive line for lunch, and that was ugly to see. And I think the Bucs defense can do similarly to that. It's not as good as the Rams, but that's basically going to be the difference in the game. If the Houston Texans offensive line can hold up, this game might actually go to Houston, but I don't think it will. And I think even if it does, I'll trust Baker and that offense, how they played against Atlanta, to win a shootout against the Houston Texans. And I just trust the Bucs offensive line to play a little bit better than the Texans, so they should be able to run the ball a little bit better. Also, I get Tampa with the points, so to me, that's a rare thing to have, especially how good I think Tampa is today. That's why I like Tampa Bay here +2 and Tampa Bay straight up. And then lastly, the final game, the Los Angeles Chargers over the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders played a good game, played a good sound defensive game. Geno threw for 360. They looked great. But that what I thought was just more unfortunate clock management from the Pats. The Chargers, kind of in the same way. They played an even game against the Chiefs. Justin Herbert had his finest hour with 319 and 3 touchdowns. Quinn Johnson had a career game. Keenan Allen had a career game. Quinn Johnson had a career game. Keenan Allen looked really good. Ladd made some plays. Omarion had a couple nice moments. Kenley was a guy that popped off the screen for me as a pass rusher. Takir Tart had a few good deflections and also good open hand palm slap to Travis Kelce. People could argue he should have got ejected. But I look at this game and go, the Chargers have the better overall roster. They have the better quarterback. They have the better weapons. And I think their defense should be able to limit the Raiders' offense compared to what the Pats did. And I'll take Justin Herbert to outplay Geno Smith in this type of game every day of the week and twice on Sunday. Should be an interesting game. The Raiders' defense definitely was respectable. Chip Kelly in the offense, they definitely have weapons to play with. And Jacoby Myers actually looked competent. So I think, the Raiders can give the Chargers a fight, but in this type of game where, you could argue it's a bit even in different perspectives, or I'm going to go with the better quarterback, and it's Vegas, so it's the fan thing. In these 2 stadiums, it's not really that much of a home field advantage either way. Actually, I think it's going to be kind of an odd NFL fan game instead of Charger or Raider fans. No offense to both your fan bases, but I'm going to take the Chargers here. Better quarterback, better roster, better coach, and I think just a better team compared to the Raiders after what I saw in week 1. So that's like Los Angeles Chargers here, -3, and the Los Angeles Chargers straight up. And that is it. So good luck to all players, coaches, fellow prognosticators, fellow fantasy players. I should be able to go 4-0 this week in my 4 fantasy leagues, so I'm very happy about that. And that is it. So best of luck to everyone this week. It's so great to have football back. Hopefully my spread picks can definitely spread back up in the right direction. But going possibly 11-5 or 12-4 straight up, greatly appreciative of that. Greatly appreciative of all the comments and words of support. And until next week, then, everybody, this is Matthew Fanatic signing off. Until then, everyone, so long.